Hello and welcome back to Google Ads for the Total Beginner 2020. This is part 7 of 12. What are keyword match types and how do they help you get customers? So we just went over what keywords are and the difference between keywords and search terms. So remember that keywords are meant to capture many different variations of search terms that people could type in. Match types are basically a tool that allow you to specify how broad or how narrow of a range of search terms you want your keywords to be able to capture. And there's 4 different kinds of match types. So you can set each individual keyword within your campaigns to be set up as a certain match type. I'll just go through them real quick. There's broad match. There's broad match. There's the broad match modified match type. There's the phrase match, and then there's the exact match. And basically, I've got Google's official documentation pulled up here to demonstrate this. So, for example, the way that you set a specific match type for a keyword is by typing in certain symbols. So up here we've got broad match, and the example keyword is women's hats. So if you target this exact these exact words here, women's hats, as a keyword, that is automatically considered a broad match type. Whereas if you add plus symbols in front of each word in the keyword, then that tells Google this is a broad match modified keyword. Now, if you add quotes around it, this tells Google this is a phrase match keyword. And then finally, if you have square brackets around it, that tells Google this is an exact match keyword. So basically, I'll give you a quick explanation of each match type and how they function. Broad match, I'll just kind of read you here what Google's documentation says, and then I'll kind of fill in any gaps that they leave. Close variations of the keyword, related searches, and other relevant variations. The words in the keyword don't have to be present in user's search. That's not very descriptive, so here's a more nuanced explanation. So a broad match, going with the women's hats example keyword, if it's set to broad match, that means that if you're targeting the keyword women's hats, that will capture that keyword will be triggered on a broad range of possible search terms that people might be using. And they only have to be broadly related to the keyword to actually trigger the keyword and for one of your ads to maybe show up. So here's an example. If somebody searches buy ladies hats, that could trigger women's hats because it's similar. It has a similar meaning to women's hats, even though it's not the exact word for word keyword, right? Likewise, women's clothing. Okay, so that's still related. Hats and clothing are both kind of in the apparel category, and so that's broadly related. Women's scarves, same thing. Scarves are an accessory, kind of like hats are, and so that will, if people are searching for women's scarves, it might trigger the broad match keyword women's hats. Winter headwear for women. So as you can see, the broad match is just what it sounds like. It'll match search terms, a broad range of search terms with your broad match keyword. This can be good or bad. So it can be good if you are trying to, if you're not really sure what people are searching for that might be valuable. That way you can, once you go in and look at the search terms that people were typing in that triggered your keywords, you can get a better idea of, okay, these are the things that people are actually searching for, and then you can take those and add those search terms as new keywords. But it's also dangerous because, if you only sell women's hats, for example, it's not going to make a whole lot of sense for somebody searching for women's scarves, right? So if somebody searches for women's scarves, that triggers your women's hats keyword. And then when your ad shows up and they click on that ad, you've just wasted that click because you don't actually sell women's scarves. So you have to be very careful with broad match. The next one is called broad match modified. And this basically means, I'll read this again, all the terms designated with a plus sign or close variations of those terms in any order. Close variations include terms with the same meaning. Additional words may appear before, after, or between the terms. So to explain what that means basically is that if you are targeting the keyword plus women's plus hats, that means that it's a little bit tighter of a targeting system than broad match. It means that somebody has to type in a search term that at least includes the word women's and the word hats, or words that are synonymous with those things. So women's scarves and hats. See, that search term has both the word women's and hats in it. Winter hats for women, same kind of thing. Now, a thing to note here, this word woman in the search term and this word woman's in the keyword aren't exactly the same, but broad match modified allows for that difference because it knows these are very similar words. Hats for stylish ladies, same thing. Ladies and women are, basically synonymous. But remember, it still has to include either the word women's or a synonym with that, and the word hats or a synonym with that. So, and another thing to note here is that with broad match modified, while the search term that somebody is searching in does have to include any words that have a plus symbol in front of them, those words can be in any order. So, let me see if they have an example. Winter hats for, yeah, okay, so winter hats for women is not the same order of words as women's hats. In the keyword, women's comes before hats, but in the search term, hats comes before women's. And that's okay. Like, that's how broad match modified works. Just as long as the search term has any of those words in any order, sorry, all of those words in any order. Next, a little bit more narrow, you have phrase match, and which means matches of the phrase or close variations of the phrase with additional words before or after. Close variations include terms with the same meaning. This is extremely similar to broad match modified. The only difference is that the words have to be in the same order. Whereas with broad match modified, the words women's and hats could come in any order in the search term. In phrase match, when it has quotes around it, designating it as a phrase match term keyword, the search term has to have the words in this order, women's hats, somewhere within the search term. So blue women's hats, buy hats for women, ladies hats on sale, buy hats for women. Ignore that middle one. I'm not sure why they said that, but basically just, it's one step more of a tighter targeting than broad match modified. It has to be in the order that the words come in the keyword. Finally, the most tightly targeted keyword type is the exact match. And this basically means that it's similar to phrase match in that the words have to come in the exact order, but it also means that there cannot be any extra words in the search term. So if you have the exact match term women's hats, it's only going to be triggered when somebody types in the two words women's hats. It would not show up if somebody typed in blue women's hats, because that's not an exact match. So Google says exact matches of the term or close variations of the exact term with the same meaning. So obviously, again, with synonyms, it'll still do this with synonyms. Women's hats, so that's the exact same word for word search as what the keyword is, but then also ladies hats, because ladies is a synonym for women, but there's still no other words around it. Hats for women, same thing. There's no extra information in there, so it wouldn't show up for blue hats for women, but hats for women basically means the same thing as women's hats, and then hats women. So that's those are the match types. And those are things that you can choose. You can change any keyword to any match type that you want. And typically you would organize different match types into different ad groups, but I'm not going to go into that in this course. I talk about that more in my other free course, Stupid Simple Google Ads, which you can sign up for on my website. But don't worry about it for now. So yeah, that's how keyword match types work. It just gives you varying levels of control of how many possible search terms you want to be able to capture with your keywords, going from super broad to very narrow. Broad matches, a single keyword can capture many different types of search terms, whereas exact match can only capture a very close, narrow range of search terms. So that's it for match types. Stick around for the next part 8, where I'm going to be talking about what do negative keywords do and why you are pretty much screwed without them. So I will see you there.